The great object of life is sensation, to feel that we exist, even though in pain.
That's a great quote.
Yeah.
Who's it by?
Lord Byron.
Of course. He's kind of like the founding father of dark academia, which is our subject for today. And if you're very new to dark academia, we're going to introduce it in just a minute. Let's just say that quote is a good kind of introduction because it carries all that kind of pretension and melodrama, which I think is encouraged and even central to dark academia, which is a kind of online subculture, aesthetic. What do you want to call it?
I think aesthetic is the best word for it. It's a type of dressing, living, which adheres to this set of colors and moods and places. Yes.
I guess you could say it's a style.
A style, yeah.
This episode is kind of a far-removed sequel to one we did a few months ago called cottagecore, because I think from my quote-unquote research, dark academia is kind of just cottagecore, but in the autumn.
Almost exactly autumn cottagecore.
But just to get into specifics of what exactly it is, Alicia has a quiz.
Yes, it's actually a Tumblr post, and it says Dark Academia Tips. But I think we're going to go through the list and we can maybe each say how much we relate to each tip.
Okay.
How much we incorporate in our lives.
Ooh.
Neither of us identify as a dark academic.
Speak for yourself.
However, we're both dressed as them. Right now, Aaron's wearing all black and I have my blazer on.
Yeah, I actually switched to purple shorts, in fact, because I was too hot.
Aaron's too warm a person to be a dark academic.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I can't do the tweed.
Yes, so number 1, listen to Mozart while drinking black coffee.
I like Mozart. I like classical music, which is, I think, what that's trying to mean.
I think so, yeah.
I think if I were to drink coffee...
You'd drink it black.
Yeah.
I think so as well. And I'd say we both could maybe check off that tip.
Yeah,
because we're both listening to classical music.
I mean, I don't touch coffee.
Aaron's repulsed by coffee, but while drinking a nice room temperature glass of milk.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's not on there.
Yeah, I know.
I think for you that's a definite though.
Yeah, I'd say. So I'd say that's 1 point for Gryffindor. No points for Slytherin.
Okay.
Actually, I'm Hufflepuff. Never mind. Okay, number 2. Wear big cashmere sweaters.
Again, that's a no for me.
Yeah, I love cashmere, but they always shrink on me, so I never buy cashmere sweaters.
So it's a no for both of us.
No for both of us. Wearing big sweaters, we're both into that.
Yeah.
So maybe that's half a point. Okay, the next one. Being secretly in love with your best friend.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not going to say who it is, but yes.
Yeah, me too.
Let's go to the next one.
Look at the moon, sitting on the balcony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Big moon lookers.
Big moon gazer. Big moon gazer.
Okay, the next one is obviously a hard no for both of us, but smoking while watching black and white old films. We both love black and white old films.
That's true. Sometimes if let's say someone's smoking some ribs on the Barbie, then I would maybe go
Sign me up.
But otherwise, no.
Let's maybe replace smoking with something else. Eating a nice pack of Skittles.
Yeah. What I like about this list is that it's, what did you say, it's a Tumblr post? Mm-hmm. But we're bringing it into real life. We're bringing in some real life practicality, logistical issues with it, perhaps.
You're right. Next, spending the evening in the library.
Yeah, of course. Where else am I going to spend it? At the bar?
Never in a million years,
with
Aaron.
Friends? Don't be silly.
You can find us in the library, separate booths, obviously.
Yes.
Read Odyssey and discuss it with your friends.
Uh-huh.
We've both done that. Have a large black coat.
I used to have one.
Yeah, I have one.
There you go.
Recite poems sitting in a room lit by candles.
I mean, that seems like something you would do.
It does.
You do candles more than me.
I'm a big candle person.
Mm-hmm.
We both sit in a room and read almost daily. Always have a book with yourself. The way these are worded is...
Well, it might not be a native speaker, of course. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. This is... I won't even read it. You'd be too appalled.
Just say it.
Wear a lot of silver jewelry.
Oh, yeah, that's a no for me.
I do wear exclusively silver jewelry, so I guess it's a yes for me. And then lastly, know someone's secret.
Know somebody's secret?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose.
I suppose as well. So, like, a little bit dark academia here on the Environmental Podcast. We're not really into the smoky,
No. There's an unhealthy underbelly, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond all the old castles and dusty books.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're going to go for a concrete definition for perhaps people who still don't get it, dark academia kind of reveres...
classical education.
Yeah, classical education and the old universities in which it was taught, I guess.
Yeah, so the two places that are kind of held up as the standard for dark academia aesthetics would be New England prep schools, the likes of which are displayed in New Poets Society, Dead Poets Society.
Yes.
As well as Oxford University.
Yeah, like these old English
Edinburgh.
kind of higher education halls.
It emphasizes like a lack of technology, writing with quills.
Yes.
It's rarely a photo of someone's laptop.
Almost never.
It's usually just like their notebooks, their books, tactile things.
The aesthetic is very brown. The books have to be dusty. They have to be old. The style of books, it was kind of mentioned in that list, but they're usually either ancient or of the Romance era. Lord Byron, as we said, is kind of a founder. I think the Bronte sisters are very popular. I feel like it's very little written after 1900. There's kind of a Halloween-y vibe to it. Like Edgar Allan Poe is kind of mentioned a lot as well. Things like that.
Yeah, like skulls.
Yeah.
Probably associated with Shakespeare's.
Hamlet.
Yes. The book, which is credited with the founding of this aesthetic, is called The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and that was written in 1992. But It was about a group of prep school students who were basically defined by the type of tweed they were wearing, and there was a murder. And it really just set up an example, I suppose, of like the social group you would be in if you were in a dark academic setting, going to the library with your friends. You were all kind of dressed moody. Just a very moody setting, I suppose.
Moody is a good way of putting it.
Yes.
So we mentioned Dead Poet Society, The Secret History, is that called?
Mm-hmm.
Any other kind of media in which this is best exemplified? I know we just did an episode on Harry Potter, if anyone's interested in listening to that. Last week we did an episode kind of reviewing the first two Harry Potter movies.
Yeah.
And those two especially depict, robes, quills, candlelight, a lot of studying, a lot of old parchment rustling, things like that.
Yeah, I think so.
So the reason that we're talking about this today, here's my thinking anyway, is that any kind of internet subculture or aesthetic that has such a fervent and, I would say, popular support, because it seems to be really widespread right now.
I think so.
And it's kind of romanticizing something. I tend to think that it's people yearning for something which modern society is not currently providing. And I think it usually goes beyond the superficial stuff. So it's not just like, oh, people like old castles and candles and old books, and they don't get to live like that. I think it's usually something deeper than that. And in cottagecore, we said that it was about simple living mostly.
Yeah, response to like the complex consumer lifestyle that we're all a part of.
And tech dependent. And as we said, that dark academia is kind of like the autumnal version of cottagecore. I think that's still a big part of it. But I think there are things which are unique to dark academia as well, which hopefully in this episode we can get to the core of. Yeah.
One thing I found interesting paralleling cottagecore and dark academia is they both take a traditionally gendered aesthetic, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, like, cottagecore is very, like, farmy, woman in the kitchen vibes, basically. Then dark academia is taken from the 30s and 40s education.
Yeah, and it's very masculine.
Which was very masculine, very white. But they're kind of bringing them into the modern era and making it more accessible, perhaps.
That is interesting.
Like, breaking down the gender roles and the barriers, associated with that. It's all about androgynous dressing in dark academia. Cottagecore is very feminine dressing, but maybe breaking down the barrier of entry to that, saying anyone can dress in a traditionally feminine way.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
You mentioned dark academia is super white as well, or they both were. In the cottagecore episode, we talked about the kind of shady white supremacist parts of the internet which use things like cottagecore hashtags. And I don't think, I could be wrong, but I haven't seen anything like that for dark academia.
No.
Although what I would say is that almost all the pictures are of white people. I think that's because it's romanticizing a time in Europe which was largely white, especially the people who are privy to
higher education.
Yeah, so I think that's the reason for it, but it could definitely become more diverse. And going through like the list of aesthetics, there was one called there are different variations. There was one called Grey Academia, which tries to let more voices be heard. Is that it?
Yeah, it just uses more photos.
And the reading list.
Diverse. Yeah. Diverse authors, not just male or white. Yeah. I think it's...
Which is good.
Yeah, and this aesthetic doesn't seem to, what they call, gatekeep very much. I watched several YouTube videos in preparation for this, and they were often talking about, it may seem like there's a barrier, like that it's a very, like, Eurocentric way of thinking, but it's not. Like, it's a forum just for, like, basically getting really into learning.
Well, it's good to hear that. Yeah. One thing I would say in terms of accessibility, maybe not racial, but financial. One might say, well, I can't afford Tweed or old books or tuition to a boarding school or something like that.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit later about ways which you can actually incorporate dark academia into your life.
Yeah.
But my response to that, I think, which kind of covers a lot of complaints about these aesthetics, is that the things you see in the pictures online are not real. You know, it's fictional. All the things we mentioned, Dead Poets Society, Harry Potter, they're fictional. So it's not like you can actually live
in
exactly
a murder
like
mystery,
that.
Or in
of course.
Hogwarts, yeah.
And what I like about dark academia is that there's a kind of knowing self-awareness about that. When they joke about...
it's pretentious.
Yeah.
But we like that.
Or they joke about murder mysteries or full moons and like the danger of it. There's a kind of... Like, yeah, there's a romance for the danger, but it's very tongue-in-cheek, I would say.
I think so. It's just kind of reclaiming the pretentious to make it accessible to people, I think. And I saw there was a quote in this New York Times article I read, and it was like, anyone can pick up a Dostoevsky and buy a tweed skirt. Like, it's
Definitely.
Like, it's not like that's crazy. And they also are promoting kind of a slow living, so it's not like they're promoting owning 50 blazers, 7,000 books. They're saying, like, have your books, have your language, your small wardrobe, which really you identify with and can wear throughout your life, I guess.
Well, that's a good thing about an aesthetic which kind of prioritizes looking shabby a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not about looking like you just came off the shelf. It's about looking like your clothes are lived in, like you are, like, almost like dressing was a second thought.
Yeah.
But like it was a second thought in the 1800s or something.
It was funny, I was watching another YouTube video, and the lady in it was talking about dark academic dressing, and she was like, yeah, it's really easy, like, you just have to throw on, like, these things, and, like, it's just a really easy way of dressing, and, like, no, it isn't, like... Because
no one has those things, you mean?
No one has those things, and also just, like, it's a lot of layers. She's like, it's just really about looking, like, dressing, she said dressing was an afterthought, and I was like, no, like... Yeah, of course. No one today, like, maybe in the 30s, threw on a blazer and, like, a rumpled skirt, but if you're doing that today, there's an ounce of thought going into it. It's not just completely...
Of course.
Secondary. Not that that's a bad thing, but it was just funny because I was like, no, like, there's no way that it's just a simple way of dressing.
Have you ever known any dark academics? Or do you think you have?
Probably. My sister's a little bit getting into that vibe, but maybe that's just the trendy thing to do. I keep using her as an example in the dark academic conversations, but yeah, I think you have known a few.
Yes, I have known a few. In my middle school and high school, I don't think they listened, so I won't shout them out. But there were a couple girls who were always, like, reading, and I mean always reading books. And now I'd say, like, oh, they're cool. Yeah. But at the time, it was like, that was kind of lame in middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah, always reading books and kind of dressed in, like, an old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
And I remember they had, like, a bit of a thing with witchcraft at one point.
Yeah.
And, like... They enjoyed dancing by themselves, playing in dandelions as a teenager. And at the time, everyone was like, that's kind of weird. But now I'm thinking, that's kind of cool. Because they didn't care.
They just knew who they were, and they're like...
And there's a kind of confidence about all these aesthetics. You talked about people will give you looks if you dress like that today. But I think that's awesome. Because we need more people that don't look or act like everybody else.
Yeah, there's this... Okay, one more YouTuber, because, like, I wasn't going to go on YouTube, because there's, like, a million videos with everything on there, but I did last night, and there's this lady named Bernadette Banner, that's her YouTube name, and she's a dressmaker for historical films. Like, she knows everything about historical dressing.
That's interesting.
But then she has this YouTube channel, and she lives in this, like, super modern, classy, like, New York apartment. But then she, like, it was a vlog, and she, like, rolls out of bed and has, like, a nightgown on, like, a long white flow, and her hair is, like, down to her knees. And she dresses, like, in period pieces all the time. Like, 50 layers. She wears stockings and, like, a camisole and everything.
How do people deal with the heat?
Cold people, Anne.
Yeah, it's really for cold people.
Yeah.
I need to make an aesthetic for warm people.
You do.
Oh, another piece of media, Little Women.
Ah, yes, that's what I was trying to think of earlier.
Especially when Jo goes to New York to write.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a crackling fireplace. She's writing. In the new movie, there's like a scene near the end where she writes the book. She does it pretty much all in one sitting with like several candles, and she's, you know, her hands aching, and she's staying up through the night writing. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like the epitome of dark academia. Yeah,
really anything set in a boarding school or about an author or an academic. Le Couriste was another film that came to my mind. It's about a boys' boarding school where there's like this choir. It might be a home for orphans. I can't remember.
What's it called?
Le Couriste, the chorus.
Huh.
It's a French film. Okay. Yes. That's I love that film, and I really want to rewatch it, but that came to mind as well. But then when I was looking into other films that were in this aesthetic, some of them were like really dark.
Okay.
There's like Suspiria, Climax.
Right. I would imagine even maybe The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
That might have some vibes. I know it's animated.
Yeah.
But everyone's dressing formal. It's kind of Halloween-y.
Yeah.
Possibly?
I think so.
One funny movie which you found on a list, which we kind of laughed off, was Whiplash.
Yeah.
Which is set in the modern day. It's not set in any higher education school. For those who haven't seen it, it's about a young adult who is trying his hardest to make it as a jazz drummer. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like a sports movie with him just trying really, really hard and coming up against this combative teacher.
Yes.
Or conductor. And when we saw that, we were like, oh, then there's no way. They included that for no reason. But now that I'm thinking about it, especially that scene I just mentioned, Little Women, where Jo's writing it all in one sitting, she's staying up through the night. Maybe a core part of dark academia, like the core of it, is being engrossed in something, is being engrossed in your passion and kind of forgetting the rest of the world.
I think so. Because that scene of him like drumming till his hands are like bleeding, he's like dunking them in ice baths and stuff.
Iconic scene.
Yeah. That's always sticks with me when I'm trying to do something. I'm like, come on.
Yeah. Come on, hand.
But
she did the same thing, you know, when she's like writing and her hand, her wrist gets tired, so she does that thing to kind of bring it out. That's interesting.
I think so. It's cool because this is a very lifestyle aesthetic. Like some of them, there's like Visco Girl or whatever.
Yeah, almost all of them are just visual, you mean?
Visual, surface level.
Yeah, vain.
And like, there's a few people who are like, that's okay if you want to incorporate it in that way, but it's very much about embodying, just being a hard worker. Yeah,
this one's more about what you do.
Yeah.
A little bit less so about what you look like.
I think so. Because I imagine if someone comes to you and they're speaking to you about the Greek tragedies and Shakespeare,
you wouldn't care what they're wearing.
Exactly. There's a person, I had this class last year, and he was just genius. And he would always, whenever he'd talk to me, I'd be like mesmerized because he just knew every book, everything under the sun. And he probably is a dark academic at heart, but didn't dress like one, just wore like Patagonia.
Do you think he knew the term?
No. I feel like a lot of dark academics don't know the term.
Maybe that's what separates the true dark academics from the fake ones.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if that's true. That would be gatekeeping. But I do think that's an interesting distinction to make.
Do you think there's any correlation with the rise of dark academia and the pandemic?
Ooh, I remember reading articles about that with regards to cottagecore. It's like everyone's stuck in their apartment now, so we're romanticizing about cabins in the woods.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think so as well, because school is shut down.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's online.
That's what I was going to say.
There's nothing tactile anymore. Your sister keeps saying everything's online. Why are we in school like that? Can't hand in paper stuff or something. Mm-hmm. So I can see why there'd be a romance for like dusty books and
the campus itself.
Yeah.
Or any kind of physical place which could act as a campus.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely the case, but I think the bigger cause of it has been just the change from summer to autumn.
I think so.
Like, it's so seasonal.
Yeah, no one's wearing this in the summer. Like, you literally can't.
I don't think many people are going to be posting about this in April.
I don't think so.
It's not really a thing. Oh, another piece of media, maybe Folklore by Taylor Swift. Kind of has vibes of it. Yeah, so this is a super autumn-centric aesthetic. Where we live, autumn only lasts 2 to 3 weeks. So we kind of savor it when it comes. We just went apple picking last week. There was a corn maze, and that was the first time I've done either of those things. And I think over time, I've come to like autumn more.
When I met you, I said autumn was my favorite season. You're like, everything's dying. You're so lame.
Yeah, I thought it was gross.
And I was like, what? but then now you're starting to see the light.
Or the darkness. You were a dark academic, maybe without knowing it as well.
I think so.
You like to read and dress weird?
Dress classically.
Right.
Aaron.
But when you're 16, it's just dressing weird.
Yeah, you're right.
I had that written down that we should talk about what we each think about the seasons, and autumn especially. Because when I was younger, summer was just so much better than every other season. Largely because we were not in school. So there's just so much more freedom. And I obviously hated school, and autumn really didn't like it because it meant we were going back to school. But now I think kind of the opposite. I like autumn.
Yeah, I like going back to school.
I mean, I love them all now. I like summer as well. Winter lasts too long, though.
Yeah. I don't mind, like, the dead of winter, though. When it's snowy and there's fires and Christmas and... Yeah.
What I wanted to talk about with regards to the seasons was how they kind of stand in contrast to the rest of our man-made culture, especially the technology of it and the rapid acceleration that's happened in the last 25 years or so.
Okay.
Because the seasons, they happen every year. You know, they're regular. They kind of ground us, or they anchor us. You know, it's like death and rebirth over and over and over. Autumn, even though it's death, maybe it draws us out of some kind of technology fever dream. Maybe
I think so.
We see like, oh, the weather's changing, and that kind of makes us for once look up and, you know, notice things a little bit more.
No, that's a very good observation. And I think fall, because it's the harvest is associated with it, and there's full moons, and perhaps it's a time for like humans of rebirth, whereas the environment's kind of winding down. This is our time that we're kind of picking up, because we're like, oh, now we have all this fresh food, and
I think
there's celebrations and such.
I don't know about that, because I think most people would say they feel most lively during the summer.
Yeah, I guess spring would be more that.
But what I would say is that through the autumn and the winter, historically, that's when we had to pay more attention about staying alive.
Yeah.
And maybe now we don't all have to do that so much.
There's still like this little instinct.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, oh, staying alive.
Yeah, something just kind of comes alive in us, and we kind of want to chase it a little bit. We want to get lost in that corn maze. We want to feel some danger, I guess.
Well, you're sounding very dark academic now. I want to feel something, even if it's pain. I keep laughing at it, but it's just because it's like we're not used to having serious conversations about like morality, and well, you and I are, but you know, as a society we're not.
Yeah, I love dark academia for that. Before I actually made a list of my likes and dislikes.
Do you want to?
But before I get into that, my last thing about seasons was just that when people say autumn, they visualize and they hear leaves falling.
Yes.
Or they smell them. Winter, maybe you see snow and you smell like Christmas trees. So they're elemental. We associate them with the sights, smells, sounds, and I feel like that's a kind of basic, I don't want to say primacy, but elemental is really the word for it. That's a kind of basic association which we don't get to experience that much, or relish that much, I'll say, all the time, especially if you live in a city, because then sometimes you're kind of insulated from the effects of seasons anyway. Yeah,
and the only thing that signals the seasons changing are like the stores, what they're selling, the pumpkin spice versus the other things, whatever Starbucks is selling at the time.
So this push for like an autumn, real autumn online anyway, a kind of romance for it, might be some kind of pushback against that consumeristic fake seasons that we experience often.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a good point. So my likes and dislikes? Maybe you can
I'll tell you if I agree or disagree with your likes and dislikes.
Okay. My first like is what we just mentioned, the drama, like the poetry of it.
So good.
The seriousness of it. Most posts I see are reposts from Tumblr,
yes.
which is kind of the dying social media for the
blogger, the academic.
Yeah, the poets.
Yes.
That's where the poets go. The poets are on Tumblr.
Yeah, it's been on Tumblr since 2014. And there's also, sorry, I'm going to jump in. I discovered this other Tumblr, what, are they threads like on Reddit or?
I don't know what they're called on Tumblr.
Anyway, this community on Tumblr, it was called Study Blur.
Oh, they're just called blogs.
Oh, blogs. So it was called Study Blur. And it was basically dark academia, but like super modern, so it's people's like highlighters and sticky notes and bullet journals and stuff.
Oh, that's another quarantine thing which was on the rise. Study with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
People just stream themselves studying.
Yeah.
Either on the laptop or with paper.
Yeah.
For like 10 hours sometimes. That's such an... Yeah, that was kind of like this as well. Because lately when I've been writing, I don't really like the term, but there's an ASMR video which is just Hogwarts studying, like quills and books bumping around.
Yeah.
And I listen to that because I'm writing by myself, because of quarantine and because I'm at home, and it makes you feel like you're in some great library.
Yeah. The thing is, I love studying alone, getting lost in it, getting into, what do they call it, the flow, the rhythm, because I've been getting better at doing that in isolation now. But it feels like way better when you're able to get into that zone in a public place, like in a library or a cafe, because you're like, when you kind of come out of the trance, you're like, whoa, I was like the most productive person here, kind of. That's not true. What you actually think, but you know.
You're actually disappearing from something.
Yeah.
As opposed to already being in this kind of half-isolated stasis of quarantine. Well put. I'm saying that to myself. But yeah, the poetry of it, most of the posts I see are reposts from Tumblr of like either song lyrics or quotes from a book or quotes from an old person, which are very, very, very dramatic and romantic.
Yes.
It'll be like, I just want someone to say that they would tear out their heart for me.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
You said to me, it seems like all these people learned their romance from Jane Eyre and Little Women and stuff. And I was like, well, that's where I learned all my romance from. And then you're like, do you want me to say these things to you? And just started reading some of the quotes, and I was like, no, that's a bit
that's so over the top. And it makes I mean, we should probably have already mentioned, it's mostly young people, I would say, that are involved in this. So there's a kind of adolescent romantic innocence involved as well. Which is, it's so earnest though, like I love that.
It's lovely. And I want kids to get back into poetry.
Yes. I don't know why I said it like that, but...
Get the kids into the poetry.
The reason I like this the most is because these things aren't present anywhere else in society, in culture, I would say.
Not even in school.
And they're mostly kind of derided.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, even what we're kind of doing right now, we're like, oh, these quotes are so silly.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should do that. You know, it's always raw emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It might seem a little bit melodramatic sometimes, but it's always a vulnerability by, one, the person who wrote it, two, even the people who are reposting it. Because they're saying, I like this, I agree with this, I empathize with this.
Yeah.
I feel. We don't feel anymore as a culture. I cry.
Snaps.
Yeah, thank you.
I was going to say we both wrote some like very romantic poems when we've been apart for like 3 months at a time.
Yeah, distance makes the heart grow stronger.
So like maybe people, when they were writing letters to each other, they wanted to convey the like earnest and like extent of their emotion.
But there's such a romance to it.
Yes.
I think it's all about, there's a romance and there's also a murderous danger to it.
Yes.
I think this is best encapsulated in the Gothic fiction. You mentioned Jane Eyre. It's all about, okay, there's this romance, there's a will they, won't they, you know, who's she going to marry kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, a happily married couple. But there's also an crazy old woman trapped in the attic who comes alive at night and might kill somebody one day.
Yep. Is that?
So there's that kind of dichotomy. But I think what the romance is for, or what the longing is for like real unbridled passion.
Yes.
Be it romantic or dangerous.
I think so.
Because we're so kind of numbed by these technological constraints placed upon us.
Very well put.
Thank you. So that was one thing I like. One thing I dislike is that still, as we mentioned in the cottagecore episode, it's kind of an insular community, which I feel, the feeling I get from most people who post it is that that's where they post it. Like it's relegated online, and maybe they don't take all those principles into real life, or don't consider, why do I like this so much?
Yeah.
Maybe there's kind of a shallow infatuation with it. And especially the fact that it's so tactile, as we mentioned, with the old books and the old places. But there's kind of an irony that it's
an online community.
Yeah, it's primarily shared and disseminated online.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't matter if that's just how you want to be inspired is virtually. Like we always talk about, we love Pinterest and those types of websites where you can just get inspired for your real life. But it's just like we encourage you to maybe, explore
don't get lost
why
in
you
it,
like
I would
why
say.
you like these things. Yeah, don't get lost.
Like, remember, it's not real life.
Yeah. Kind of our thing here at the Environmental Podcast.
I mean, for me, I'm talking to myself because the way I found it was I was just kind of spending too much time on Instagram on the search page. And the search page is an algorithm, so it changes over time based on what you click. And it just started to become all dark academia stuff before I really knew what that was. Because I was like, oh, I like this literary stuff. Oh, I like these poems. And I'd be reading them. Oh, wow, that's a nice building. Flicking through old pictures of that. And yeah, that's how you get that's how you go down the rabbit hole. That's how you get submerged. One more thing I like is the focus on education and classical education. Because that also is something which I feel gets kind of mocked.
I think so.
Or not prioritized as much in pop culture as it should be.
Yeah.
This is like the coolest way to spend an evening is learning about what you love.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
And it doesn't have to be learning about these colonial histories that are maybe associated with the New England schools and English schools, but it can be just learning, about what you love. Find a poet you love. It doesn't have to be one of his classic poets. It could be a modern one.
Although I will say that I like the fact that it emphasizes classic stuff, classic art, classic lit, history, historical geography, politics, mythology, stuff like that. Because no one learns that in school. No one's taught that in school. It's almost all forgotten. It's almost kind of like a dead language of its own.
I think so.
And it's good that it's encouraging that people still kind of look at those and think, I want that.
Yeah, I think as a society, we aren't grounded in anything anymore. So I don't see anything better than history to ground us.
Well, I think the reason, history for sure, but the thing with like classic lit, even learning instruments, classic art.
Learning languages.
Yeah, there's kind of an elitist slant towards it, where it's like, that's kind of how the rich were always educated.
Yes.
But I do think, we have the means now, and education's so kind of standardized. It should be easy enough to filter some elements of that down to everybody.
Yeah, like literacy rates are super high compared to what they were even 50 years ago. So
exactly.
It's accessible to read, to write.
One more thing I dislike is that, I think I already mentioned this, people might be inclined to do things, maybe read an old book or buy an old book, just for the purpose of sharing it online.
Yes.
Which is, I guess you'd call that performative dark academia. It's like maybe they don't really love the things, but they like people to think that they do.
Yeah.
I don't want to be judgmental, so I won't go too much into that, but that's kind of a social media thing more than anything.
I think so. Wearing a brand just to wear it, basically.
Yeah, but what I will say is that since dark academia kind of came up through Tumblr, where your username is not usually your name, and it's not so much a profile of yourself, and even Pinterest, I don't think it would be so widespread in this.
Yeah, I don't think so. Because that reminds me, I was scrolling through a few different articles, which are basically just galleries of dark academic pictures, and I have this Pinterest board that I have Pinterest for like 6 years, and it's just called like aesthetics. And then I was like, whoa, this is like really similar. Like a lot of the photos were literally just ripped right from Pinterest. I was like, this is really similar. So it's just kind of this aesthetic that maybe has been in people's subconscious for a while.
Yeah, it's nothing new.
No.
Like Dead Poets Society came out in the 90s.
Yeah.
Little Women came out 200 years ago. Another thing I like about it is the emphasis on pre-industrial objects and the tactile nature of them. Yes. As we already mentioned, that's kind of the point of this podcast, which is trying to explain these intangible, I would call them benefits of a physical book over like an ebook. I don't know, they're just so awesome.
They are.
They're just so cool. They just remind you of reality, of living, of your senses.
Yeah, you create a connection with every book you own and letter you write.
And that's why, like, so many of the the posts are literally just either a moody picture or maybe a paragraph which tries to evoke an atmosphere.
Yeah.
It'll be like you're walking down a cobblestone street at midnight as a gentle wind breezes through your hair or something.
Yeah.
And that's the post. And you're like, okay, yeah, senses. I remember those. What might be awkward is that you think you read that and then you just keep scrolling down.
Because our brain can't distinguish the difference between a memory or a like if you like play through a situation in your mind, it can't distinguish from what's reality, right?
Yeah, and that's a good way of articulating why I find the internet so dangerous.
Yes.
Another dislike is that it seems kind of unhealthy. It seems to romanticize kind of staying up through the night, drinking tons and tons of coffee. I never see any mention of exercise. Yeah. Everyone's just kind of thin.
Yeah, I also had a list of likes and dislikes, and that was at the top of mine for a dislike. Because I'm like, yeah, it's romanticizing, like, working hard, but I think you need to prioritize health above everything else.
I don't mind it because it's just not about that. Like, this is just talking about the academic side of your life. Maybe this is just one side of... Maybe the people in the pictures, as soon as the pictures stop being taken, just go and, like, work out in the castle gym or something.
Yeah, they're on the rowing team.
Yeah. But I doubt it a little bit, and... Yeah, it's the no sleep. There's kind of a romance for like a lack of nutrition, and again, it comes down to being so immersed in something that you forget to eat. You forget to exercise. You forget to get sunlight. There's a lot of posts joking about the fact that cottagecore people have to remind dark academia people to go outside.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this collision of worlds and aesthetics?
Maybe everyone has like you're like this % dark academic, this % cottagecore.
Ooh.
And everyone's like somewhere on that
Maybe
spectrum.
we should make that test.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
But yeah, I think romanticizing being tired and drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes just isn't a good thing, but it seems to be like almost every online community does that for all three of those things.
Yeah.
It's like, stop. Like, drink some water.
Why do you think those are all involved? Why do you think that goes with the aesthetic? Do you think it's a simple... That's what people back then used to do? Or do you think it's something deeper?
I think it's something different. I can't put my finger on it. I suppose there's like a look, like it might be a physical, once you're like sleep deprived, you look tired.
Yeah.
And maybe it's like an aesthetic thing, just like, yeah, that's like desirable.
Mm-hmm. But again, I understand the no sleep, because it's about you're so devoted to your work and your education.
Mm-hmm.
But the smoking... And like the coffee.
It's like coping. I also had always troubled was one of the things.
Yeah.
It's like a coping mechanism.
Of
and
course.
I'm like, no, we need to cope in healthy ways.
Yeah, it's almost like those people who kind of romanticize mental health illnesses.
Yes.
There's definitely an element of that.
Yeah. Just be aware of that if you're getting into dark academia.
Last thing that I really like is the lack of irony involved. There's no kind of... Like we said, there's a self-awareness of it. But there's no...
No ironic mustaches.
Yeah, I don't know how best to say this. It's very earnest, I find.
Yeah.
Just people who like this aesthetic, they're kind of joined in a passion for, I would say, real life. Obviously, these topics of education. And they're just, together. Like you already said, it's very accessible. They seem very nice to each other.
Yeah.
And it seems like a nice thing.
It kind of seems like the community you and I often talk about. We're looking for somewhere where you can just discuss seriously, like literature and life and morals. It's just like not a physical place yet. It's online because universities aren't like that anymore.
Well put. Did you want to go through your list, or did I cover most of it?
No, you covered all of them, that's why I didn't really mention them.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, romanticizing learning, exploring morality, I love those. I also had the hint of witchiness.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah. There's like there's dark academia and there's grey academia, light academia. I think it's like witch dark academia.
Oh my.
But it's just like, for some reason, witchiness like creeps its way into both this and cottagecore. And I just want to say, I don't think you're a witch. Just stop brewing potions.
No, but again, there must be something deeper about that.
I know, but it's like, I don't understand it. I guess it's spooky season.
I guess it's spooky season, hashtag 2020. But I think...
hashtag keep Halloween alive, 2020.
Actually, I think hashtag make Halloween year round. I think it's kind of like, we've talked about it with Studio Ghibli movies before. We're like, would these movies be so magic without the supernatural elements or without the fantastical elements, as we say there? And we often say, no, probably not, because it sells it even more as a fictional, idealistic place. I think it's like that. It's just another way of adding magic into it.
Yeah. Yeah, well put.
Hence the Harry Potter
I think that's
reference.
true. And maybe because people are kind of stuck in a place right now, they can't go and discover, they can't go to a library and like get the magic experience of flipping through books and going for hikes and stuff. So they have to bring it into this like weird witchy brew your potion.
But you've even talked about it about Harry Potter. I asked you what would be your favorite class at Hogwarts, and you said probably herbology and potions, because there's like you want to learn about these magical plants. And you said it was kind of like baking, but magical baking. Hey, we just solved it because quarantine, everyone was baking all the sourdough.
Yeah,
and they just want to bake the magical sourdough.
I always like when I always have issues with my digestive system, and I suppose it's kind of fun to like try and brew up different concoctions to try and remedy it, like maybe mixing your green tea with your honey and your whatever, like maybe it's a little bit of that, but I
suppose you think everyone involved is gluten-free? I think a lot of them.
Probably gluten-free, maybe vegetarian. Maybe it's a little bit of that, because I think like those people who are into like the witchcraft stuff are trying to solve an issue. Maybe like they're like, oh, this is my love potion, but maybe you just need to eat some dark chocolate and oysters. I don't know.
Okay.
We're gonna cut that.
Sure. No, we're not. Do you have anything else to mention about this?
I had a couple of people I discovered and maybe like suggestions for the dark academics who listen to this and they're like, now what can I do to learn more? Or
go for it.
What are some online things? There's this like short film by Max Joseph on YouTube. You know him?
Yeah, Casey Neistat's friend.
Yeah, and it's called Bookstores. I really liked that video. It's him just like discovering, like exploring bookstores and trying to get to the root of why we love them.
Yeah.
I really liked that. YouTube. R.C. Walden. He's just a dark academic. He's in, like, anthropology, classics, something like that. And he's just, like, a university student, and he talks about the aesthetic and inclusivity and such. And it's just, I found his videos interesting. Read some Virginia Woolf, maybe. Yeah, and that's that.
Okay, so I think we can get into maybe just a quick close, which is ways to incorporate dark academia into your everyday life. We're going to try and set you guys off with a kind of to-do list. If you listen to all this and think, that sounds great, maybe what are some ways I can be like this?
Yeah.
And not just repost pictures online. Do that too if you want to.
Number 1, become pen pals with us.
Ooh.
If you'd like to be our pen pal, just DM us on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we'll give you our P.O. box.
Ooh.
And you can become our pen pal, and we will gladly write back to you in calligraphy ink with a quill.
Maybe not with a quill.
With a fountain pen.
Did you have that pre-planned, or you just came up with that?
I just came up with that, but I think it'd be really, really
fun. That is a cool idea. I'm excited.
I don't want to share my P.O. box on the web.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I was worried you were about to say directly.
That's number 1.
Okay.
Just write.
Just write.
Your thoughts.
Write your thoughts. Journal.
Journaling is so good.
And if you want to have some deep discussions, so do we. So please send us a letter.
Yeah.
A real letter. After sending us a DM, so we can establish that you are not a killer or something like that. I had...
Or if you are a killer and you're into the art. It's because dark academics are into that. They're into, like, murder mysteries.
Send us a knife. With, like, a lipstick kiss on it.
Okay.
So, how thoughtful.
What's next?
I had read. Really read. Because we always say, like, read. We always say, read these books, this is nice. But we've both found that sometimes not all reading is alike. Sometimes you're just kind of reading for the sake of it. Sometimes you're not very present. Sometimes you're skimming over things. So I'd say really read. Really think about what you're reading.
Research the author, the book, the context, maybe.
Well, what I was going to say was, firstly, you might say what to read about, fiction, non-fiction. I don't think it matters.
No.
What I would say is just find something you love. You already said this with the education. Find something you love to learn about and learn about it.
Yeah, don't be ashamed of it. Don't think, oh, this isn't going to make me money. Oh, this isn't going to pay off in the end, because I swear it will.
And also, when it comes to reading, don't think, oh, this isn't classic enough. Oh, this isn't Shakespeare. I don't like to read that, but don't feel ashamed about liking anything. Just read.
Yeah.
Read what you want to read. Because I've felt that before. I felt that before. Like, well, I want to read this book, but maybe it's not very classy, or maybe it's not going to learn me much. It obviously didn't.
So articulate.
And maybe I at times put off reading it, or not want other people to know that I'm reading it, or something like that. But just read it.
Yeah, and don't force yourself to read something if you don't like it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Don't force yourself to read a classic.
Yeah, like Arabian Nights. No.
No, I didn't want to read that.
Don't want to read that.
Yeah, so really read or watch movies. And I would say, I had to slip that in there. Pay attention. And this is a tip which I've kind of tried to take in. Don't go online after you watch it or read it and check what other people are saying about it. Maybe try and watch or read something without knowing the critical response to it. I think a great idea would be to go to a bookstore or a streaming service or whatever and pick something up without knowing what it is.
Yeah.
Like without knowing anything about it. Because that's incredibly rare. I don't know if I've ever done that. At least it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Yeah, form your own opinion on it. Even if maybe it's a deep metaphor, maybe you don't understand it so much.
Yeah.
Just try. I mean...
That's how you learn.
Sometimes...
critical thinking.
Yeah, sometimes we get things spoon-fed to us because it's easier. I know I do that all the time when it comes to reading a book. I'm like, okay, I have my opinions, but I'm going to go online to see what's really intended or what was really the metaphor or something like that. But I'm trying to stop doing that. I think that might be key to it.
I recently read a book without knowing what it was. It was called Girl with a Pearl Earring, and that's one of my favorite paintings. So I guess there was that kind of connection that I read it and loved it. So definitely do that.
Another tip I had was reduce your screen time. Because no one in Dark Academia pictures is ever... Like, we're not like, oh, look at them in that castle on their laptop. Yeah. We think, oh, look at them in that castle, existing in that castle, not always plugged into the rest of the world and the outside world. They're just in that moment. So reduce your screen time. And the third tip that I had was explore. Because we talked about the danger and the intrigue. And I think mystery is a good word which sums it up. That's why it's moody, it's nighttime, things are old, and there are secrets to uncover.
And there is everywhere you go. Like as us millennials, Gen Zers, I still don't know, we're terrified of talking to people. So like, yeah, go to your cafe, go to your bookstore, but like maybe talk to the workers. Because like you might think, oh, they're just here, it's just their job. But like usually they're really interesting and you can get to know them. And there's something romantic and mysterious and exciting about that. Like
that's a way of exploring.
Yeah.
Oh, I will say that Dark Academia people... Maybe this is just the post, maybe they don't really mean it, but there's a tendency to place the world's problems on everybody else and think, when will all these things fall into my lap? You know, even with romance, it's like, when am I going to meet someone who's just this? I'm like, I don't know, maybe you have to go out and find them. Yeah. Explore. So I would say, and you said exploring with people, which is a great idea. And also even, you said, go to the cafe, I don't know, go somewhere else. Yeah. Because most of us, I think, through the years probably spend more and more of our time in fewer and fewer places.
Yeah.
So try and break that habit.
I think so. I was just thinking like in my small town there's like 3 places.
Yeah.
So like you really have to like dig in to explore those because like you've obviously been there 100 times, but like you still can. There's still things to learn and uncover in those places. But you're right. Try new places.
That's about what I had.
Thank you, folks, for listening. This was a very fun conversation, and Aaron and I are going to be doing our best to live a week of Dark Academia, maybe. Yeah, because we're going to be posting on Instagram for roughly the next week. Dark Academia-related pictures. Yes, we're also going to be apart this week, so maybe we could write each other letters. Ooh. That'd be nice. We've already gotten some pictures of Alicia in her cool, tweedy, professorial outfit. Yes. So check us out on Instagram at @the_environmental if you're interested in that. As I mentioned, we just did a Harry Potter episode, so if you like the sound of Dark Academia, go listen to that. Otherwise, have a great day.